What up, nerds? We're checking out Midpoint today. So this is what I'd like you to think about. Your best, super favorite friend forever. Your friend lives 5 blocks east and 4 blocks north of the city center. Here's the city center in the middle. You live 7 blocks west and 2 blocks south of the city center. Where do you meet for coffee and gossip on Saturday? You want to meet halfway between your two houses. So what I'd like you to do is plot this point and plot this point, and then think about where the middle point, let's call it M, the midpoint, might be. Plot those, find the middle. Go. Aight. So if we were to plot these points, this is north, this would be south, this would be east, this is west, right? So 5 blocks east, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 5, 4, and 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 2. So this is -7, -2. All right. We're looking for the halfway point, right? Where do you meet for coffee and gossip? And it's not the city center, right? The city center isn't between the two of you. But we want to find the midpoint, the spot to meet. So one way to think about this is how far up and how far over would you have to go to get from one house to the other. You only want to go half of that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is 6 units, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This is 12 units. To get halfway, you would walk up 1, 2, 3. You'd walk up half of this and go over half of this. So up 3 and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3 and 6. And also, this person would have to walk 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and down 3, 1, 2, 3, right? 6 and 3. So this is the midpoint, right? We call it M. It's at -1, 1. Cool. Another way to think, so looking at the full distance and cutting it in half is one way to think about it. Another way to think about it is this. We want to see, on average, how far over do you have to go from the city center to get to this point, and how far over from the city center do you have to go to get to this point. This distance is 5 over, and this distance is 7 over. And if you added those up, right, if you took the average, said on average, how far do we have to walk to get from the city center home, you could say 5 plus -7, and that's that total distance. If you divide it by 2, you say on average, how far do you have to go over? And that'll give you the x-coordinate for your midpoint, right? So 5 and -7, so this is -2 in the numerator and 2 in the denominator. This ends up being at -1, which is just like what we thought right here at -1. This point has an x value of -1, comma, 1 for the y, right? You can do the same thing for the x's, or sorry, for the y's. You can say, okay, I know that from the city center to get to your friend's house, you have to go up 1, 2, 3, 4 units, and to get to your place, you have to go down 2 units. So on average, the median y is going to be 4 plus -2. So on average, you're going -2. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so that's +2. +2 over 2. So on average, you're going up 1 unit between the two of you. So this is the x value, and this is the y value, and that's the midpoint. Without having to find the whole thing and divide by 2, you find the midpoint as -1 and 1. You call that M. All right, let's try to apply that, right? So if you could go ahead and find the midpoint, that'd be great. There's in the text, there's a midpoint formula that looks like this. And that's great, but it's kind of awful, right? Lame. I don't want you memorizing formulas, but I do want you understanding what this means, right? This is just the average, right? This is just the average of the x's, right? And this one's just the average of the y's. Think about taking an average, right? If you get a 7 on one test and a 5 on the next test, on average you got a 6, and you do that by adding them up and dividing by the number of numbers, so dividing by 2, right? So this is 7 plus 5 is 12, divided by 2 you get 6, just like you'd expect. On average you got a 6. We can do that same thing with these coordinates, and so here's an example for you that I'll do, and then I'll have you do a different example. So check this one out with me. I want to find the midpoint of these 2 points, right? Visually, I can see it's right here, right? And I can go, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, and up 1, 2, 3. So I'm guessing this is at 4, 3. I want to be able to do this eventually with just the coordinates and not have to look at them on a graph. Yeah. Oh. So what I'd like to do is use this idea that it's just the average. And so let's look at the x's first. So on average, this x is 2 units away, and this x is 6 units away, right? 2 and 6. So if you added them together and took the average, right? This is the x, m is for midpoint. So this is 8. This is 8 divided by 2 gives you 4. And that's just what we expected here, right? Let's do the same with the y values. This is 5 units up, and this is 1 unit up, right? 5 and 1. So on average, you get 5 and 1 over 2. That's 6 over 2. That's 3. So on average, they're 3 units up, and that's where this comes from, right? So you can just take the y value and the y value, plug them in here, right, and use this idea. You don't necessarily need to memorize the formula. Cool. So take that idea and try it with this. Find the midpoint of these 2 points. Go. All right, so this is the same idea. We're just trying to find, this is the x, this is the x, right? This is the y, this is the y. So the midpoint, which looks like it's going to be here, right? It looks like it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, comma 1. It looks like 4, comma 1. Now, I want to be able to eventually do this without the graph. So let's look at just on average, how far do you have to go over to this point? Well, 2. What about how far over to get to this point? Well, 6. So the average of 2 and 6 should give you your x value for the midpoint. So this is 8 divided by 2. This is 4. Hey, just like we thought. And then you can also look at the y values and do the same thing. The y coordinate is -3 plus 5 all over 2. And that's +2 over 2. That's 1, just like we thought. Ping. Great. One note is sometimes the midpoint is not an integer, so make sure you don't miss the point. Here's my example. Here's 1 point, here's another point. We want to find the midpoint. It looks like it's 1, 2, 3. It looks like it's right in the middle of that. And here's 1, 2. It looks like it's in the middle of those. And it might be. That's okay. So here's the x's, right? Here's the y's. And what you can do is say, okay, the median x point, this has an x and a y also. The median x value is 1, the average of these two, which is 5/2, right? Which if you're I like 5/2. You can leave 5/2. It's simplified. You can't simplify it anymore. If you like that, you can turn it into 2 and 1/2, and that looks to be about right. 1, 2 and 1/2. For the y values, you can do the same thing. You can say, oh, okay, oops. On average, the y value here is 3 plus -2 over 2 because we're taking the average. So this is 1 over 2, which is just 1/2, which is exactly what we think. we thought. So in the coordinates for M are 2.5, comma, a half. Cool. You try that here. See if you can do it without looking at the graph, but here's your x, and here's your y, Go. All right, so your x midpoint is going to be the average of these 2 points, the 4 and the 1, right? The average means divide by 2, so this is again going to be 5 halves, which is 2.5. You can leave it as 5 halves, but it's 1, 2.5, right? Same thing with the y value. The y midpoint is going to be this value, the average of these values. So add them up, divide by 2, and this is 4 over 2. This is just 2, which is right where we'd expect it to be. So the midpoint is going to have coordinates 2.5, comma 2. Great. Ping! One last tricky bit. Sometimes there's a problem with the there's a problem where we can't see this other endpoint. So this is one endpoint that we can see, and they give us the midpoint. We know the midpoint, but we can't find the other endpoint. I don't know where it is. Maybe there's a fog, or maybe it's a math shark. Rah! But either way, I don't know this point. Well, you can set up in the same way. You say, hey, this is an x value, and this is the average, and whatever this x value is going to be, I know that we took x1 and x2, we added them together to get xm. So you can say, so we took the average of them. So you can say, hey, I know that -5 plus whatever this unknown one is, I know that if we added those up and took the average, we would have gotten this average value, -1, right? And you can solve for x2. You multiply by 2, and you add 5, right? So x2 looks like it's add 5, looks like it's 3, yeah? And then you can do the exact same thing with the y value. So let's take the y value. Here's our y1, the y2 here, I don't know, but I know this ym is 4. So I got 4 by taking the y values, this one I do know, this one I don't know, and taking the average, right? So multiply by 2, subtract 6, so y2 looks like it's 2. So it looks like this endpoint is 3, 2, right? From this, and this. So if we remove the fog of war, here's our point, here's our endpoint, and it looks like it's 3, 2. It's 3, 2. And another way you can visualize this is say, hey, going from here to here, you go down 1, 2, and over 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Down 2, over 4. It's the midpoint, so you got to go down 2 and over 4, and you can just count it out to verify. But this method is a lot smoother. Cool. Try that out, and oh, let's see. Here, I guess try your own. Oh, that's just the math shark. Sorry. We'll throw some more problems at you next time. Bye.